Well, hi, everyone. My name is Glenn Wilhelm. I'm your host here today at Armed in Faith, and I certainly appreciate you joining me. Our mission here at Armed in Faith is to encourage and equip others to share the good news of Jesus Christ. And I'm super honored to invite Corey. I met Corey a little less than a year ago, and Corey has graciously offered to come on, share his story. So, Corey, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody involved with Armed in Faith, and those of you just tuning in, like Glenn said, thank you for joining us here in this new ministry. You know, Glenn's been a great friend to me. We've shared great ministry together, great fellowship, and really got into the meat of things, and really had some laughable, you're not laughable necessarily, but laughing moments in our testimony, and we've shared tears in our testimony. It's been a powerful journey thus far.
Yeah, and I when I met Corey, and we were actually going through a program called Alpha, and man, God just spoke to me. I told Corey, I said, man, I know God's going to work great things through you, but correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't always that way, was it, Corey? I mean, I don't think God was always the center of your life. So if you tell us a little bit about kind of where you were, what happened, where you are now, and we'll go from there.
All right, how to keep this concise. So, long story short, I'm just gonna summarize this. I grew up with my grandparents. My father passed away when I was less than a year old, and my grandparents were already pretty old, so we faced some challenges there. And then after my grandfather died when I was about 6, things started going downhill a little bit. I was always looking for the crowd that would accept me. I went to a school that was wealthier, and I surely wasn't wealthy, and I started feeling the effects of that, and kind of looking for the outside crowd, I guess, if you will. And started smoking cigarettes, early in middle school, 6th grade, and hanging out with what eventually would be the gangsters and the people who were selling drugs and people who were doing drugs. And of course, this wasn't in middle school or high school, but later on in life, it just progressively led me down the wrong path. And it was just seeking that acceptance. And I never thought the Christians were cool, or the goody two shoes. And that's how I always looked at the Christians. And it's like, wow, these guys are weak, and they're this and that, and it's just not for me. How could some guy up on a cross fix my life? And that was before I ever really came to know Jesus. And one of the things, I was still naive and still in the pit, still denying God, or running, not necessarily denying, but running from God. And then I ended up going to this program called Dare to Share. I don't even know if they still have that going on, but it was at the Denver Coliseum, and it was a big 3-day thing, and it was this big Christian fest. And that was the seed that was planted. I think I was either 12 or 13, it's big time juggalo, all about ICP and painting my face and smoking weed, and you just being reckless with my life at a very young age. And I went to this Dare to Share, and the ministry there was so powerful. It didn't matter my background. Everybody was there to greet me with open arms and share the message of Jesus and share the gospel. And I noticed that there was just something about these weird Christian people that were just these goody two shoes. I started noticing that they weren't all goody two shoes. Some of them were just like me, some of them came from the same backgrounds and were hurting before. And then I saw that there was this happiness that surpassed all understanding, and that there was this peace about these people, and the message that they shared was just it was so genuine and so real. And I found myself, they were doing these plays, and it came down to when Jesus was crucified, and it just it hit me, and I felt these, I felt this emotion come over me, and I had tears in my eyes, and I couldn't understand why.
And now you were, hold on, let me interrupt. You're at 13 or so at
Yeah,
this age?
I was 13. Yeah. So
Okay.
this is this is before I really started messing my life up, but the seed was still planted before I really got, down in the dumps. But yeah, so the seed was planted through this, but I still, after it was over, I thought about it for about a week and then went back to doing what I was doing, smoking weed, going to the skate park, hanging out with the gangsters and the metalheads and, goth kids, whatever. And, I started getting in a lot of fights and one thing led to another. I got in a fight, police came, I got busted with a bunch of paraphernalia, marijuana stuff. I got charges for assault, minor in possession, and then that, it didn't stop there. I kept partying, got another minor in possession for alcohol, and then, when I was about 15, my buddy and I were breaking into cars, and then eventually they threw the book at me and they sentenced me to 2 years as a juvenile.
Wow.
So I went, I did 2 years as a juvenile, and I got out, and then I went on the run, was still trying to rebel, still trying to run away from God, went on the run, and then they ended up putting me in the adult facility. And you
And you're
know,
how old at this age?
I just turned 18.
Okay.
So
So you're
they
18, you're in jail with the adults, correct?
yeah, they put me in a prison unit. Like a
Wow.
lot of these guys that I went into, it was at Denver County Jail, but um back then it was called Building 8 Baker, and it was just, you go in and it's just this big hallway, and on one side is a brick wall, and then on the other side is just these tiers with bars, just like something you would see in a movie, like Alcatraz or something. I was, it was scary, honestly. It was like, man, this could be my life. And I was talking to some of these people in there that they were trying to fight their cases, but I mean, they were never getting out. There was a couple people in there that were never getting out, and they already knew it. So that's when it really started to open my eyes, and like, man, I can't keep doing this. So when I was in there, by the grace of God, my cellmate, he actually, he was reading his Bible all the time, and we started doing more Bible studies, and I started learning more and more. And I was in there for about a year. So yeah, I mean, about 3 years total that I was locked up. And you know, and yeah, reading the Bible, and I really started, highlighting things and learning more about Scripture, and learning why Jesus among other gods, why is Jesus who he says he is. And this powerful testimony, it changed my life, and I thought that I wasn't going to go anywhere, that I wasn't going to amount to anything. I was always going to be, go ahead.
Yeah, so it started to change your life. So
Yeah.
what happened when you can read the Bible and you can kind of dive in? I mean, what kind of like, I hate to say use the word revelation, if you will, but what were you kind of feeling and going through as you're reading this 2,000-year-old manuscript?
I think that the thing that really started opening my eyes was the Gospels, the New Testament. And when Jesus said, I didn't come to be served, but to serve people, and to bring hope and to fulfill the law, that even though I'm a broken sinner, I'm a liar, adulterer, murderer, slanderer, all of these things, that I can still be forgiven, and then I can still be granted a hope, or a peace and a happiness that surpasses all understanding, because I hadn't really felt that. I'd always been rebellious. My father died. My mom was partying and just didn't really have time to be a mom. And my grandma was trying to make ends meet as a real estate agent, just kind of left to my own devices. Not saying that my grandma didn't try, but she was only one lady.
Right.
So yeah, it's just like after it's like going back to that, I always felt like I needed to do something cool to impress people that didn't care about me, always looking for the acceptance crowd. I finally felt like that piece, like, oh, this is what Jesus is about. Oh, Jesus is the one that will accept me and will still be there for me, even when I fall and when I stumble, he'll still be there for me. Unlike my street friends that when I went to jail, I didn't get letters. I didn't get money on my books, no phone calls, none of that. I was left there by myself, with my cellmate and the good book. And that's what really changed my life. And it's like, you know what? I don't want to live like this anymore. I want to be one of those corny Christians, the goody two shoes, because I realized that they loved me for me and that they were there for me in with the ministry and with the faith and the fellowship, that there would always be somebody that I could talk to that would actually have my best interest in mind. Not like, oh, hey, you want to go sell some dope? You want to go get high and like to try to ease my pain, as I had a lot of mental illness and a lot of pain when growing up. So I finally saw that that's what Jesus was about, and the love of Jesus just, it surpasses all of that heartbreak and pain.
Right. Yeah. And I can relate to a lot of that because I partied a lot as a kid, as a young adult. And I'm much like you. It was like, I don't want to be a Christian. I can't have fun anymore.
Right.
And your definition of fun changes, and the way you have fun changes. So I definitely relate to that. So you're okay. So you're in jail, you're starting to, I mean, did you have that one moment where you just gave your life to Jesus, or was it just, I mean, because not everybody does that. Was it more of a gradual thing? What was that progression like to where you really says, okay, I'm reborn, if you will?
Man, I feel like I have many moments of giving my life back to Christ because, if I'm going to be completely transparent on here, I still struggle all the time. And I'm sure many people can relate to that, whatever people's struggles are, it's, I still have my moments of weakness, or I find myself being lukewarm. I find myself not, I'm like, Jesus, every time, like, cruising down the road, it's like, we're just cruising, the cruise controls on, I got this. And I start noticing I'm switching lanes and the ride's becoming bumpy. I'm like, I have to rein it in. Like, Jesus, I'm off course again. I'm off course. Please help. I noticed that that's what I feel like my life is there's a lot of that, going back and saying, Jesus, I'm sorry, forgive me. I repent, and I have to turn back around and rein myself in, die to myself again,
Right.
all the time. So yeah, I don't think, I'm trying to remember the revelation, but I don't think that it was when I was in jail. I think that it was when I was at Dare to Share and just felt this overpowering emotion come over me about this guy that I've been running away from my whole life,
But that's really interesting that you say that that was the defining moment, but yet you went and got in trouble and spent 2-3 years kind of locked up after that, but the seed was planted.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty fascinating. So okay, so you're a Christian now, right? And being a Christian is not the easiest thing in the world. We have struggles
Mhm.
as well, and you just alluded to that. But if you could kind of maybe, I know there's a lot of people that are, man, just dealing with being lonely and not feeling loved, and you didn't come from the most stable environment growing up. What words of advice would you have for those people out there that are, man, this God's not real, or I'm in this and you don't understand? I mean, what people are searching.
I'd say, okay, so from people that I've talked to, I feel like this was addressed actually at Cherry Hills one time, that this is the most spiritual culture. This Gen Z is the most open to spirituality, but it's not Jesus. It can't be Jesus. Anything but Jesus. Whether it's mushrooms, Buddha, meditation, yoga, but not Jesus. Like, Jesus is too much. My life might actually change if it's Jesus. I might actually find the truth. is what I've noticed. And I think that, the give like the best advice is just let go of the people aspect. Like, oh, these Christians make it so bad because they're hypocrites and they're liars. Like, yeah, guess what? We all are. Just because someone's a Christian does not mean that they're a perfect person, because we're never going to be perfect. But that's what being a Christian is being a disciple of Christ and striving to be Christ-like. So I think my advice would be open your mind, open your heart to say, ask God, God, if you're real, show me. If you're real, and I think people want just lightning bolts to come from the sky to show them that they're real, but it doesn't. I feel like God is manifest through the Spirit, at least with me, that it's been a feeling for me that it's like when I ask for God, God's not, it's like God's knocking on the door all the time, but it's up to us to open, right? So it's like, okay, I'm gonna open the door, and every time that I'm like, come in, God, come into my life, I feel that overwhelming sense of relief and joy and hope and that peace, even though we live in the storm right now. Like things are crazy, things are up in the air, everything is uncertain, but Jesus is that rock, that anchor, right? That you can always count on, being the same every day and never faltering. So I think that the best advice would be to open the door and give God a chance. Ask for him to give you that hope.
If somebody's watching this right now, how do they do that? How does somebody go to accept Jesus into their heart? How does that work, Corey?
I think letting go of your ego, if you're like, oh, this God isn't real, you have to let go. You have to let go of the ego and be willing to accept God, or the possibility. If you think that God is just this imaginary figure, like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or this Sky Daddy, God, I can't stand when people say that, but I hear that so much recently. But I'm like, if you can just say, okay, God, I'm gonna give you a chance. And it's just like a challenge, like a fitness challenge. You know, what's the guy's name? Nikki, the guy that started Alpha, he was an atheist. Is like, you know what? I'm gonna read the Bible because I'm gonna prove to these Christians that God's not real. And then it ended up transforming him, and now he's a worldwide leader of this Alpha group. So I think that that's what it takes, is letting go of the ego and digging. If somebody really wants to know God, you have to search, you have to ask questions. It's like getting to know you, getting to know a friend. It's, hey, what are you about? What do you like? What are tell me about yourself. You have to ask those kind of questions and really start to try to develop a relationship with God.
Right.
Um, as he's knocking, there's signs. I'm sure everybody at some point in their life has wondered, like, was that God? Is that God trying to tell me something? I know that everybody's had that moment in their life where they felt something, or they've seen a sign and maybe they've blamed it on the zodiac being right or something, or the stars aligning. I don't know. But I think that, if anybody listening has ever felt that stir, it's like, well, what was that?
Right.
Could that been, what was that coincidence? If you've ever felt that, give God a
That's
chance.
that's what I call being armed, right? So armed in faith.
Right.
When I came up with that name, to be armed is like something happened in my life and I can't explain it. But I know it was a God thing. It could be super small, it could be big. It's like there's no way that whether it's a feeling or an experience, but that's being an armed, and the faith is doing the research and saying, wow, man, it actually. And I've talked to some atheists and heard a lot of people say, man, once I really studied, I actually have to have a lot more faith to be an atheist than I do to be a believer in Jesus Christ once I look at the evidence. So, if you're out there and you're one of those, and you're to that point, it's like, man, I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of being stressed. I'm tired of being depressed. It's as easy as saying, God, I'm tired. I'm tired of doing it alone. I'm going to put aside my pride. I want to give my heart to you. reveal yourself to me, and you just pray to accept Jesus with an open heart, and the rest will happen. It may not be instant, but there's this famous picture that there's this doorway, and you're on one side, and you've got the handle, and Jesus is on the other side of the door, and there's no handle. Jesus is not going to force his way into your life. All you've got to do is open up that door and invite him, and he will come.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Corey, thank you so much for sharing. Awesome information. And I encourage you guys, if you know somebody kind of in Corey's situation, please share this. This is what we're doing, is we're hoping to encourage other people, equipping them. We're equipping them by sharing stories. So send this to somebody that you know that just might need to hear this. So we thank you all so much, and God bless all of you.
God bless. Thanks a lot, Glenn.
Absolutely.
Love you, brother.
Love you too.